Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. Rob here, new face, so I'm very excited to have you on here. I'll give you a second to give me a little rundown of who you are and all that good stuff, but before we do that, remember, make sure you hit like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff so that you get your email every day that we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, by all means, put them up in the comment section. That way we can engage them right away. Kind of like this. Chris K jumps in right away, says, a creed is a formalized statement of religious, philosophical belief serving as a guide or set of principles adhered to by a group of individuals. That is in reference to a question I had asked on Shaun's live just a few minutes ago. So we'll get into that shortly. Any thoughts or questions before we dive into Rob and then go from there? Guys good?
We're good.
All
I
right.
want to hear
Just a
Rob.
quick intro from Rob, maybe.
All right, let's get 30, 45 seconds, Rob. Who are you? Where do you come from? All that good stuff.
Okay, thanks. My name is Rob Chan. I'm from Newmarket, Ontario. I'm currently a member of the RCMP. I have 32 years service, 32 and a half at the moment. I did my first 24 years in British Columbia, and I came back to Toronto here in 2016, and I currently, this is where I'm posted. I've been with the emergency response team since 1999, and that's where I'm currently serving, and looking forward to finishing my career within the next couple of years. Not looking forward to finishing it, but that'll probably be my timeline by about 34 years service. So I'm in my retirement's on the horizon, and I'm just getting a lot of opportunities to travel and train and instruct and give back to the membership. And I've had an amazing career, and I don't want to leave it with me. I want to give it back as much as possible. So that's where I'm at right now in my career.
I like it. Now, I got a quick question for you on that. With Seb's mustache while he was in and your hair, is there like a rule in the ERT where like you have to have perfectly groomed facial hair? Or
That's a good point.
Is that a rule or something?
Is that something you learn in recruit in school or something like that?
Like I was standard jarhead like everybody else. From when I joined until only 2 years ago, every 2 weeks it was high and tight. It was the flat top. And this haircut, believe it or not, is my starting to transition into a civilian face.
You hippie.
Yeah, you're halfway there. I can't believe it. Can barely see your face for all the hair.
Right. It's almost touching his ears, and that's just too much at that point right there. So, yeah, I just... now we want to get into the topic of the day. Now, this week's topic is, of course, hope. And we've been talking about that all week and how the different topics throughout the week have hit that. Today, we're going to be finishing up, or starting from where we finished yesterday. And yesterday, we were just touching on the topic of supporting roles, of people doing what they can to help when they can do it without having to be the person in charge or the person leading the charge, for a lack of a better term. Now, I'm going to define support, but then I'm going to turn it over to you guys to get what you guys feel about what it is to be in a support role. So support is defined as to bear the weight of, especially from below, keep from falling, sinking, or slipping. That's one way to put it. To bear or hold up, to keep from weakening or failing, give confidence or comfort to, which I think is an interesting way to look at it in terms of bearing the weight of something. So I'm going to go to Travis right off the bat. What are your thoughts initially on supporting roles?
So supporting roles, when you first mentioned that one, I was thinking, cognitive, emotional, physical support. And we can find that in our workplace. We can find it in our relationships, in our playtime endeavors, in our husbands, wives, spouses, boyfriend, girlfriend, all the rest. I think that there's going to be a nuance between how support is given or received. And I think it's important to understand that receiving support is a very important trait that somebody needs to comprehend. It's something that I'm working on because it gives value to the person who's giving support to you. Now, the support that I give my children is not going to be the same support that I give to my wife or to my coworkers, but they all will have a common trend, and that trend is going to be action. It's not just words. If my friends say, "Don't worry, I got your back," and I need the support, and I look behind me and I don't see them. I look beside me and I don't see them, and there's no mirror around me. That's not support. So, and that wouldn't be a friend either. So the common trait that I would see in all of this is you show support through your actions, and you have to understand how to accept support as well. What was that, Bill?
I think that was Rob getting a
That's
notification.
my time is up, Bill.
No, it's all good. That was your time, yeah. Rob, what are your thoughts on supporting roles?
Are we talking like a personal context or a professional context?
Both, either or. What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
So I guess I always relate everything to work. It's in a professional context, our unit, let's say the one I'm at with ERT, we are simply a support service. Although, the guys in it and the operators in it try to, do the best they can to seek their objectives. Everything we do is in a support, like assist to help carry the weight to do your part for the better of another investigation or whoever's tasking you, and then leave it for them. And so I think from taking away from a team aspect, from a leadership perspective, I think the way you defined it, it reminded me of like every step in a leadership rank within the RCMP is like corporal, then sergeant, then staff sergeant. The higher you go, the more your job is to support your members, provide everything that you had stated, to be there, lift them, provide them, back them up, everything that was previously mentioned for the sake of their betterment, because that's your job, is to elevate that next generation. And sometimes it's obviously reversed. It seems like everybody's supporting leadership or pushing the top, but it has to be inverted because you have much more scope to develop and create a bigger impression. And once you've done that and you set that tone, that's how everybody sees their job or sees their performance, is supporting each other, supporting an investigation, supporting someone else, rather than being the primary factor. Then everybody, it becomes the way your method of operations. It's just your standard of operations, and it just elevates everything. I think it's hard for me personally to accept support. I always feel like I'm prepared to give it and offer it, but I've had to learn to receive it graciously. And as just stated, when you do so, it actually gives value to the person who's offering it, as opposed to diminishing it, saying, no, I'm good. I can do this myself, or I don't need your help. I kind of do that out of consideration, but it's actually maybe less courteous than to accept it and let them have some validity to actually help me. It's something you have to learn.
Absolutely. That's a tough lesson. I think we all have to learn. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts. One is in respect to what Rob just said, and so I got to clear that out of my head before I can launch into what is directly my thoughts on supporting roles. And so Rob had just said that we all have to, or he had to, learn how to graciously accept support. And holy moly, it's a struggle, man. Like, I've struggled with it for a long time. So now my specific question to Rob is, a guy who has been encouraging me to get better at it is a guy called Sept. Maybe you've heard of him. And so I'm curious as to whether you taught Seb to be better at that, or he taught you to be better at that, because one of you are responsible for trying to teach me to be better at that. Does that make sense?
It does. Oh gosh, I don't know. I can't say that I've been.
I suppose it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Seb's got a style all his own, and he's always been driven and has his clear direction and mindset. If I think it'd be self-ingratiating if I said that I had contributed to who he is today. But yeah, I don't know.
That's right. So now that you've been on the spot, what I will say is tease out the details of that, because you're a supporting role in the fact of me trying to get better at that, in a sense, even though I barely know you. So the people who are tertiary to us better understanding things, we may or may never meet. The things that we say, we may never know the impact that it has. We've all got supporting roles. And our roles that we play, if we're playing our roles well, we may never see the outcomes of it. So now Rob knows that maybe he's partially responsible for getting all up in my head and making me try to be better at accepting support and accepting gratitude or accepting a pat on the back is the thing that I struggle with the most. So people are in supporting roles all around us, people that we may never meet that are all around us. And so I just wanted everyone to maybe think about it in a little bit of a different spin, that it's not always the person who's directly in front of you, who's either wagging their finger or patting you on the back or arm around your shoulder or guiding you through something. This is all support for sure, but there is invisible support around you all the time.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, I kind of wanted to go back on what Travis said a little bit earlier, where, you know, when someone offers support and then you start looking around and they're not there, what it reminded me of was the thoughts and prayers on social media, right? When something happens and then you just see it across the board, thoughts and prayers, and that's the last people think of it, right? That's it. Versus, for instance, I had a friend of mine recently going through a bit of a struggle. I can't physically help him in any way, but I said, hey man, you know what? I'm thinking of you. But what I was doing was checking in every once in a while just to see how he was feeling, just so that he could get some, you know, words out rather than just being in his own head. But what are you guys' thoughts on the thoughts and prayers? How does it play into either hopelessness or hope, or where do you guys think that social media plays into this, Travis? What do you think?
Well, you know, on the supporting role standpoint, it's not something that someone can do for you. Supporting isn't being the bridge, it's supporting the bridge. They can help you. They can't change the winds, but they can help you adjust your sails, so to speak. So if you're the person providing support and you think, I'm doing a great job because I'm jumping in, I'm doing everything for the person, what you're really doing is you're taking away from them. I remember I did a podcast with Jim Shockey, and he had a throwaway comment that seemed to have more depth to it than he was ascribing to it at the moment, because he sat there and thought about it for a little bit. But he was talking about his children, and he's had great success in TV and his career and all the rest that he does. He's a Canadian hunting personality and has been able to provide a lot for his children. And he says, in a bit of a throwaway comment, how they have so much, perhaps he's done them a disservice because he hasn't allowed them to succeed or fail on their own merits. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and it plays into the support. So our role as supporters is to be able to help a person, but we can't do it for the person. And I think our role as being supported is recognizing when that's going to be beneficial for somebody else to be of service, to be able to assist you, or even, you know, as Shaun's saying, if there's people out there who are providing support that aren't even directly related, but through their actions or words, what you see them doing, they're providing support to you. Reaching out and letting them know that, saying, hey, you know what you said over here, or your example that you said over there, made a difference for me. They might not realize that they're providing that support, but it might help tweak their sails and realize, okay, I am being watched and I'm making a difference.
I like that. Shaun, any thoughts?
Yeah. So supporting roles, the thing that I was considering at the start of this conversation is how people understand their role as a supporter is kind of determined early in life, and typically through sports. It's not typically through school. You're not supporting anyone in school in junior high or elementary or whatever the case is. You're learning how to interact with other human beings for sure. But the moment that you enter into some sort of a sporting event, a team, we'll call it, then you start learning what it means to be a captain, or then you start learning what it means to be an assistant captain, or then you start learning what it means to be the water boy. You learn roles within teams, and then those teams teach you how to support the people around you. Through either titles, as the assistant captain will say, or through an unspoken responsibility where you feel that you can be more helpful in a way on that team that you maybe don't even understand at that time. I think that high school team sports help teach people how to be good supporters within a team environment. And if your high school was predominantly a solo journey and solo sports with no real team interaction, then at what point do you learn how to play a supporting role within a team environment? Because that's what we're talking about. In order to support someone, it requires another person, and now you're a team. And so it's just a first thought on how do we learn how to become a supporter within the roles that are available on a team.
It's interesting, Rob. Do you have any thoughts to add?
No more than I can add from Shaun and Travis articulate. You had mentioned, though, I think you made a comment about the thoughts and prayers kind of comment on social media. And I'm much more of just an observer on social media than a contributor. I like keeping track and seeing what people are doing and the status and the updates. I observe and follow up more than I contribute personally. But I feel something like those comments, although they might just sound routine, and I think it's a way of acknowledging something rather than if you don't really know what to say. Usually those kind of comments come when there's some kind of hardship, some kind of loss, somebody suffering, and perhaps it's for lack of better knowing what to articulate or how to say it, but you just want to at least acknowledge that you recognize it and you see it. It's probably limited, especially because who knows what everybody is, and can't even assist them if you wanted to, but just letting them know. I think the person receiving it still appreciates it. At least it's an acknowledgement, and when they see that from people, they do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a tough situation too when you're thinking about giving people support without physically being there.
Yeah,
it can be a little tough. And the thing that kind of clicked in my head, Shaun, you had mentioned the water boy, and it's funny. I laugh because people want to be the quarterback, people want to be the star, people want to be the large and in charge, look at me, without, I think, ever having to do the work. I think that's a challenge. Or perhaps the water boy is a less prominent position, perhaps like the janitor, perhaps like, and there's a lot of professions that I think are looked down upon, but where do you guys see those supporting roles develop, let's say, in terms of that team interaction? Shaun, I'm going to come back to you for that one. What do you think?
Sure. Have you ever seen how well a dehydrated quarterback plays?
Probably pretty poorly.
Probably not as well as he could or she could. Yeah. And so there's a role for everyone. And that role is as important as any other role on a team. I think what happens is people are in a team, but think of themselves as a individual within a team rather than allocating, I am part of a team. I am as important as everyone on this team based on if I don't do this, then that. This, then that sort of outcome. So the quarterback can run around for half a game, flipping all the moves and getting all the touchdowns until he hammers in because he or she is dehydrated. The water boy saves the day. But the water boy doesn't run out onto the field and pour water into the quarterback's mouth. The water boy gets in front of it and reads the situation, sees that the quarterback is not running the game well, and says, hey, you need some water every time he or she comes over. You good with water? I got some water here. So our roles are not passive roles. We have to understand our importance within a team, but then you can't wait for the quote unquote star of the show to come over and ask for help. You're an integral part of the team. It's your responsibility as the water boy. I've been a freaking water boy. I get it. It's your job to handle your role like a professional, 100% effort for the team, not for the quarterback, not for you, but for the integrity of the team. That's where the focus is.
Trav, any thoughts?
Yeah, Shaun says some interesting things about in school, elementary and high school. It would be the sports aspect where you find the supporting roles. And I think, wouldn't it be interesting if a teacher took a different perspective with the class and said, you know what, here's my objective. Here's my job. Here's what I want to see at the end of the week, end of the month, end of the year. Here's your role. Here's how you can help support that. And maybe ask the class, how can you can you think of other ways you might be able to help support, maybe out of the box, so we can get to this end objective together? I can tell you, if I had a teacher like that through high school and elementary school, it would have been a much different scenario for me, because you'll have a class working together towards a mutual goal, supporting each other, and perhaps having a bit of a cultural shift in the way that people think about what support is. I was in Germany. I was invited on a hunt over there. A fellow was talking about his first hunt in Germany, and he says, it was a lot of work. And after I ended up he got a roe deer. After I got my deer, man, there is a lot of work that I had to put in after that, and money. And so, well, what do you mean? He says, well, in Germany, it's not the hunter who's celebrated. It's, if you're successful in the hunt, it's now the hunter's job to go around and celebrate the camp cook, the people that help pack things in, all the ancillary support that was up there. And that cultural sort of shift on things is, so instead of glorifying the quarterback who's in the limelight, they wouldn't be able to do their job in the way that they do without all of the support around them, and that should be properly recognized. And with those, you probably talked about hope theory in one of the past podcasts, Dr. Charles Snyder. Did you guys talk about that?
Not directly, but you can, by all means, let us know.
So it ties into the whole hope and supporting roles, but under hope, they talk about it not being wishful thinking. It's not a wish that you put out there. And they say for hope theory, it's got to have three different key points, and you have to have a goal, something that's obtainable, achievable, something that's going to be worthwhile in the distance that you can work towards. You have to identify your pathways and how you get there and see which one's going to be the most advantageous pathway. And then you have to have a sense of agency. So in that hope theory, you have to understand that you're going to be able to actually have the cognitive, emotional, physical ability to be able to get to that point where you're going. And that's where the supporting people can help as well and keep you on that track. If they know those goals and they're cued in on the same pathway. I mean, two people work, you got half the work. Now you've got so much more agency.
Mm-hmm. Rob, thoughts?
It was just this morning, I was on a phone call with someone, and I'm actually recruiting for a support position on my team. We currently have support operators, support logistics members. They're not tactical operators, but their role is exactly that, supporting our mission, supporting the members, all the logistics, the equipment maintenance, the getting from, looking after everything to ensure a successful deployment so that the operators arrive at scene, do their job, and then get back. And without them, we would struggle. We couldn't pull it off. And we're looking to actually increase the amount of people we have in our support section, recognizing how much they contribute. And our primary support member, that is his mark of success when things go smoothly and problems are foreseen and dealt with before they occur, and the smooth operation and the ability to facilitate every one of us to do our job and just come back. We get that fine, small window of a skill set that we get to do, but everything that leads up to it, and then afterwards, all the administration and the admin and things that have to happen afterwards, he looks after. And it's a lot for one person. We're actually expanding the role because the support positions are so important and we value them greatly. I really like Travis's example is how they're actually recognized and celebrated on a more or less a scheduled kind of expectation, and it's something I could learn from. But we try to do as much as we can to acknowledge them. They are part of the team, an integral part of the team, but they don't, as Shaun said, they don't get the limelight. They're not the ones on the photo ops. They're not the ones captured in the media or get the cool pictures with the uniforms, their background. But without them, we couldn't achieve the objectives. Super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaun, you got anything to add?
I do. It's based on what Rob just said. I hadn't never really thought about it before. I have thought about it. I've just never said it out loud before. And that is, as I could be off base, but what I heard, to paraphrase, was Rob was carefully vetting an individual to ensure that they were the right fit for a high-performing team. I'll go with that. And so That's really important. I don't want to overlook that in this conversation, because that's the mark of a true professional who is carefully selecting the resources that is going to support his team or the team. And I find that maybe we all don't do it as well as we should. Maybe we don't vet our supporters as well as we should in our life. And so that might sound a bit strange, but let me give some context. When someone is hurting, and we'll say it's a mental health struggle, or someone is in the hurt locker and they're in a dark place, and right around that time when maybe there's not enough support around them, or they feel like they don't have any hope, or there's no path forward, the tendency, as I understand through all of the interactions that I've had with people in these moments, is they'll reach out for anything, man. The first person who walks along and even slows down in front of them and looks at them in a way, they're going to reach out and say, "Hey, can you help me? Hey, I'm struggling right now. Can you explain to me how I get out of this?" So nearly anyone, qualified or unqualified, they will reach out to and try to make sense of the struggle that they're in at that time. And so at the other end of the spectrum, when it's an organization or an individual who's in a much better place, we'll call it, now there is granularity on the selection of who is the right supporter in that moment for that team or for that individual. And so when we're at our best, we have good granularity. We pay attention. We carefully select who's going to support us. But when we're at our not best, we're more prone to just maybe reach out to anyone who we think might be able to help us or not, because we don't know. And so I think that there's an important point there to be made, whereby irrespective of where you are on the spectrum of needing help, we should all take a moment to just think about what would serve me best now, rather than reaching out as a reactive moment. Be proactive and just take a tactical pause and think, where am I at right now? And I know that's hard to do sometimes if you're really hurting. Where am I at right now, and what would best serve me right now? I've got to develop a plan of action that I'm going to execute against, rather than a randomized shotgun blast of just grabbing whatever you can as a supporter. What do you guys think?
That is a fantastic question. I'm going to get to that one in a second here. I just want to hit these real quick, Cody. Good day, everyone. Seb joining us. Mic drop for ST, I think, for the Shaun Taylor.
You spelt it wrong. It's RT.
There you go. And I think this goes into the question I was going to ask. So I'm going to add a question onto your question, because I think this speaks to intent. Right? Commander's intent is one of the things we use a lot in the military, where it gives you a concept of what needs to be done, rather than direct orders as to this needs to be done, that needs to be done, so that if something does go wrong, then you can actually engage it on your own, rather than having to go for direction. I think that implies to what you're talking about, Shaun, where I don't know if people have their own commander's intent to understand who to grab when they're struggling. So I'm going to play into that a little bit, but Trav, what are your thoughts on Shaun's question?
Yeah, I think it's an important point. Rob brought up and Shaun hammered down. It's support. Why? Ask the question why. Somebody says, "Hey, I'm there to help you. I'm going to come in. I want to help you." Okay. How come? Is it for their glory? Is it for you? Because I think support should be selfless. If Rob goes and hires somebody who wants to support them because of the glory that they'll have being associated with the team or whatever it might be, and their end goal isn't for the team to be number one, their end goal is that they want to look number one by association of the team, there's going to be a trust issue in there. When you know the person is there supporting you for you, it develops trust. And I think that's a very important thing to be able to have. Even if you're looking at, like you were talking about, friends' mental health, if they're looking for a talk doc to go talk to. Each doctor is going to be different. They're going to talk to you differently. They're going to have a different background or perspective. It's up to you to be able to vet the right person who's going to help you get to your end goal in a way that's going to be beneficial for you. So, and when if you look around yourself and you say, I've built up the support network, but they're not in it really for me, they're in it for themselves, or they're in it for the wrong reasons, I would say it's never too late to pull the weeds.
Like that. Rob, thoughts? Oh, you got to unmute yourself there, Rob.
That's sorry, first time. No, Travis nailed. That's a really good way to end it. It's never too late to pull the weeds. To Shaun's point, one of the most important factors we're looking not in skills and abilities, but personality, is humility. And when that an abundance of humility is what we try and instill in the operators, hopefully it's vetted through in the selection process. When we get them, if not, it's definitely part of the team culture is humility, and it's what we look for when we bring people back. Because if you're pretty sure, if you're confident you have that nature in another individual, then you know that their intentions won't be for themselves, won't be self-serving, won't be for the limelight. Of course, everybody wants, it's somewhat self-serving because you want to do a job that you want to do. You want to be part of something, and that gives you reward. But with that balance of humility, it steers intentions in the right way. I think it's something you almost have to keep track of sometimes too, because it can get lost, especially depending on the age, the seniority of the person, where they start as to where they progress. Sometimes people need a bit of a humility check or put back in place and remind of it. But I think that covers a lot for us, and that's what we look for.
Yeah. Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, I hadn't. This is a novel thought based on what Rob just said. So I hope I'm not taking us too far off on a tangent. In my live IG chat that I was on just before I hopped into this, so maybe half an hour ago, someone had hit me up in the live comments with, "Hey Shaun, have you?" I think generally it said, "Hey Shaun, have you ever worked with the RCMP ERT, and what are your thoughts on them, etc." And so I broke it down. Of course, I'm a huge fan. I broke it down to the first time that I ever worked with the RCMP ERT was the Vancouver Island crew, and that was in the very early 90s. I was a young sergeant, and someone carefully chose working with them on a weekend. I mean, I'd like a weekend off occasionally, you know? Why does it have to always be a weekend where I'm volunteering my time? So we spent a weekend with the ERT team, and they were unlike anything that I'd ever worked with before. That was the first interaction of military with ERT that I had been made aware of ever. And so it was a real good weekend. I learned a lot about them. They learned a lot about a young Pathfinder sniper, and because I was a handful. But they sucked it up and performed, and it was freaking awesome. So my nod went to those fellas on that weekend based on them doing a great job. And so that interaction with them, they were a supporting role, believe it or not, in my life, because they were cool. They were cool guys. And I mean, when I say cool, that means a lot of things in my world. They were just cool dudes. And so I got a positive opinion of the RCMP ERT at that time. The next time I saw ERT was CERT, Special Emergency Response Team, as part of taking over that role and responsibility from them in order to roll over into JTF2. And so working with those guys, they were freaking awesome. They were large and in charge. They were tip of the spear, as it were. And not only was I taught by them and worked alongside of them, but again, my opinion of them was those guys are freaking cool. And so I bumped into many ERTs after the fact, and all along the way, believe it or not, my opinion of those ERTs was added to that first interaction. And so that first interaction was critical, man, for me. I'm not saying it's critical for everyone, but that first positive, cool dude experience set me up for an opinion that was strongly based on, these guys are cool, man. I dig their style. And every time I played with another ERT crew, it just simply bolted on as a extra 3%, extra 2%, extra 1% of cool, 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 cool. But that initial phase of what are these guys all about? Okay, now I understand. It is critical. And so for anyone out there who is in a supporting role, we'll call it, the first ERT was a supporting role all the way up through to CERT and then all the way beyond. I still think about that initial interaction as a formative supporting role for all the other ERTs that I played with. I hope that makes sense.
Rob, looked like you got something to add there.
Yeah, it does, because a negative interaction would have set a different tone too and led you to reinforce. And it's so important, and it's awesome that you had that was it. I'm really glad that built a good foundation. And when we went and transitioned from a part-time entity in the force, which is Canada-wide, in 1997, I believe in 96, with our first full-time team, there was a lot of obstacles to overcome with what you talked about with humility and or perceived perceptions of who we were, what we were, and what we were doing. And we had to break stereotypes, and we had to really, I remember telling my team, I came over to the full-time team in 1997, took over a new team, and I had to hammer into them humility, 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 and to the point where you almost have to lower yourself, simply because people already have this expectation, a negative one of you, that you're too cool for school, you're elitist, you're jocks, and all these kind of things. So we wanted to completely, take that away and undermine it. And I'm glad that was your first impression, and then they were continuously built favorably upon that. That's the ultimate goal, and that's great. And
it is
likewise for your organization and our involvement, because we're in awe of the military and the specializations that you do, and then but you meet the individuals, man for man, individual, and they're just cool people, cool guys, and it's great. It's a great brotherhood.
It is, and cool is cool, and I mean, anyone who understands what's cool gets what we're talking about for sure. There is a little, another side to the coin, as it were. So, just speaking about the RCMP ERT as the example, I had a positive interaction, and all along the way, that was built up more and more positively till, in my mind, I have a very positive opinion of the RCMP ERT. So, with that in place, then, as a JTF2 warrant officer, I had to go down and spend a week with Toronto ETF, or Emergency Task Force, or kind of like SWAT for anyone who's out there listening, I suppose. And so spending a week with those fellas, that was kind of like the first time that a dude like me had gone and played with a crew like that. And so my responsibility in that point, as a supporting role member, was to put across the same positive experience. Not show up like a goof, show up and be cool, if that means anything to anyone out there. And so you've got to understand the weight of the moment, the importance. It's almost like history, in a sense. That first interaction with that new tribe in New Guinea, that's kind of what we're doing. We're making a positive interaction with a new group that you are setting up a supporting role for everyone who will follow behind you. I wasn't doing anything important in that week, per se. The greatest importance was to set a bridgehead for our team to have more future positive interactions with a crew of cool guys. Just trying to connect cool to cool. And if you're the first forming bridgehead, you've got to double down and represent appropriately, professionally, in a cool way to set up the future.
Interesting thought. You're speaking my language with all the bridgeheads and things like that. I was like, yeah. Trav, you got any thoughts to add?
I'm just putting my head to takeaways on the support and ways that we can maybe actionable things that people can use in their life to support others or to be supported. And I've just been taking a few notes here. Support doesn't actually always necessarily mean that you're in there physically doing something. If somebody's got a problem and you're like, well, I got the solution for you, maybe that's not providing support. Having active listening, being there to listen to the person, hear where they're at, allowing them to be able to come to a conclusion or get where they need to be, by providing that example, that would be supportive. Humility, selflessness. I think if you're looking for that in others for their support, you've got to recognize that that's what you have to have in yourself moving forward when you're supporting anybody else. You're not doing it for your glory. You're doing it to get them to the next place. And I think that helps just keep the ego out of everything. If you are genuinely invested in the other individual or team or whatever it might be, achieving a higher level or a higher objective, and you're able to provide that support in a way that they're able to do that, mission accomplished. Accepting, knowing how to properly accept that support and acknowledging the support that was provided. Because what somebody provides to you might be little to you, but big for them, or vice versa. It might be massive for you, and it's just a very simple thing for them to do. Acknowledging that and letting them know, just say, look, no joke here, but what you did in helping me out really helped change my perspective, or really helped me get to the next point. Because as Shaun's saying, you are essentially priming the pump for future support, and you're creating a framework so that those around you know how to give you support, and you know how to be able to accept that support. So those are the only notes that I was jotting down while we're chatting there.
Absolutely. I think this is it's a pretty important point in terms of, when you go into any game, into any scenario, you want to win, right? You want to be able to do the best job you possibly can in order to win said game. And it goes into something as simple within the military as security, right? Nobody likes standing sentry. It's not a fun job standing there just staring at a scape of something. You're just staring at basically nothing. But it's a super important job, because if you can't do that, the team isn't secure, right? There's nothing else. Nothing else could be done unless there is security to begin with. But it's not glamorous. It doesn't have the sheen on it or the veneer of it until someone actually lays it out that how important that job is. And I think it's similar in terms of hope, or in terms of developing hope within a group or within a nation or within anything, is it requires people to have an understanding of what the goal is. What is the end state that we all want, right? We all want to be safe and go home and live our lives. Well, that means that we all need to support each other. At least that's where I'm coming from. What do you guys think, Shaun? Am I on base there, or am I?
Well, if we're going to use the example of being a sentry, well, the sentry should understand their job, of course. They should understand the importance, of course. But here's the deal. Humans are unique. Not everyone understands how to do the job well, even when you tell them how to do the job well. And that comes down to how much you're in the game. I mean, who hasn't stood in some dusty spot of the world and looked out in an alien landscape and stared at it for 12 hours and see nothing, essentially? But it depends on how you play your game. And to play a good game, you've got to understand why you're playing a good game. You've got to understand the importance of the moment, not how to do the moment. The importance of the moment is you may be protecting 1,000 men, or you may be protecting 2 men. The number isn't important. What is important is that you push yourself a little bit harder, because you're responsible for other human beings. So you can be a sentry all day long, or you can be a sentry who understands why you're there. And those are 2 different things.
Very much so. Rob, thoughts?
Yeah, Shaun, speaking to like professionalism of your role, and I agree with you. Although, we have sentry positions in green operations. It's not something we do very often, if at all, or very rarely. But there are roles and positions as far as security, nights, and different observations that are less glamorous in our work. And one thing that is important for those PIT members to feel and to feel like not such a, I don't want to swear, crappy job, less glamorous job, less desirable job, is we have to, this the TL, the supervisor, and needs to speak to them, needs to acknowledge them, let them know they're there, reinstill why they're there, reinstill what they're doing is important. Don't forget about them. Because like you said, I would imagine it's Sentry being on a night shift kind of thing, looking off into nothing and holding a post while everybody's sleeping. It's pretty lonely. We have similar jobs like that. And it's easy to feel like you're forgotten, like it doesn't matter, like the cool stuff's all happening and everybody gets to go off and play while you're doing your lonely, crappy work. But if you are checked on, if you're acknowledged, if you get a bit of a reminder why you're there, people acknowledge the fact you're there and you feel valued, it'll do a lot to change people's perception, value of what they do, and enhance their professionalism and dedication. Just to acknowledge them and don't forget about them. If you think if they're treated and if it's a forgotten about job and nobody's acknowledging it, then of course, how are they supposed to feel? So I think we can do a lot as leaders to increase that level of awareness, performance, and professionalism and value to the position and the role that they play.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis, thoughts?
Yeah, the biggest thing I'm picking up there is communication. I mean, if leadership is to be the art of influencing human behavior to accomplish a mission in a manner so desired by the leader, you have to be able to communicate that and have that clear communication on both ways. So you have to be able to actively listen and understand, pick up on the verbal, paraverbal, nonverbal, and communicate over to the other person, team, individual, and understand that both hope and supporting roles can be very subjective, because what I might be supporting another person in might be very simple for me if it's within my wheelhouse, but very difficult for them. And we might have two very different perspectives and vice versa. Something that Rob's helping me on, it might be illusory to me, the end goal, but to him, he's like, no, it's 2 steps, you're over there. So understanding that it is subjective, not to diminish the value, and to be able to constantly communicate what that value is, I think will help foster a supportive relationship both in yourself and others around you.
Shaun, anything to add?
Yeah, I do. And I think, and it's not our fault. It's not the panel's fault that I'm going to make this point to clear up something that I feel I need to say. Because I know we all understand this. It's just that we haven't verbalized it maybe. Or maybe we have, but I missed it. But here's the deal. We're kind of talking about supporting roles, supporting upwards or supporting within the team. But maybe we're not talking about, as is just being said, I'm just trying to say it definitively. As a team leader, you're the supporting role. You're not the guy who's being supported. You're the guy who is supporting. And in the moment, the reason I want to say this clearly is because in my past, I've had moments that kind of go from one end of the extreme to the other, in the sense of, Taylor, grab your gear and get out there on sentry. And it's a punishment, because that's the way it's put across. And though I understand my role in the moment, it feels like I've got a boot on my neck, as it were. Whereas it can kind of be delivered this way. Hey, Private Taylor, grab your gear. I need you to go out there. You're going to be out there for this long. This is what you're going to do. Roles, responsibilities. It's really important. Don't let me down. Get back to me in a few hours once you're in place. Roger that? Roger that. And so that's delivered from someone who is in the game with me. My leader is in the game with me. My leader cares about me. And in that moment, what he or she is doing is teaching me how to be a good supporter. So his supporting role for me as a young private is to teach me how to be better in the future, how to be a future leader. So the supporting role is mutually supportive as long as a good leader thinks down and supporters think up, meet somewhere in the middle, and learn how to do it better each other.
It kind of goes into what Rob was talking about very at the beginning with vetting, right? Because that's really what that leader is doing for you, is he's vetting the job, he's vetting you and making sure that you understand what's happening. I think it's a really great piece to focus on a little bit, is that it's the team that is more important than the individual. And as you said, Sentry sometimes is it's a punishment at times, and it has been many times that I've seen but it's actually, again, one of the more important jobs. It reminded me of the worst sentry shift you can have, the 2 to 5 o'clock in the morning shift, right? Where you get a little bit of sleep and then you're up for a while, then you get maybe an hour of sleep and then you're back to work. That's looked at as almost a punishment. It's if you didn't do well that day, guess who's going to be on the 2 to 5 shift? You are. But if you don't really take into account the fact that that is the most likely time you're going to be assaulted from the outside, that's something that you need to be aware of, and that's an important position to be put in. So I think what are your guys' thoughts on how do we get people to focus on the team? How do we get them to remove themselves from the individual placement of it and focus on that team? Rob, what do you think?
I think it comes back to what we were saying again, as Shaun and Travis stated, when we articulate specifically to the individual what their role is and why they're doing it, then it focuses on their contribution to the bigger end state, to the mission, versus just what their tasking is. And this is a good tasking, crappy tasking they'd rather have, as opposed to what they're doing individually, and then just recognizing them as opposed to just a general, like I said, specific, give them a mission specific goal, and stay in touch with them and let them know that they're part of it, and they'll focus on the mission and the welfare of everybody else, and the fact they can't let anybody down by not doing the best they can for their job. It takes their own discomfort or personal feelings about what they're doing away, and recognizing, just focusing on how they're contributing this time.
I like that. Trav?
Yeah, I don't think you get them to concentrate on the team personally. I think you get them to concentrate on the idea or the concept, and the right team will get behind that.
I like that. Shaun? Thoughts?
And I kind of like out of the box thinking. I kind of like out of the box leadership. And here's why: because maybe that supporting role member has done like 1 million sentries. I mean, they're like the sentry person, and they don't like it. And a bunch of leaders have gone through them and said all of the right things, but it just hasn't synchronized. And now they're on the 1,000,001 sentry, and they're still not enjoying it because everyone who's walked by them and said, "Good job, we really appreciate it," that just ain't working for them. And they're resentful and bitter, and they want out and all of that good stuff. So they're not doing their sentry job the way it should be done because they want out of that job. So any leaders that are out there, I'd say just try to do it a bit differently. Don't pull out the playbook called Leadership 101. Think outside of the box for each individual who is in front of you. Try to do it in a bit of a different way that will make someone kind of like pattern interrupt the moment of, what? This guy actually does care. No one's ever said that to me before. Wow. Let them chew on it, and then get back to them in the near future and see how they're doing. And then out of the box lead it again. Just try to tweak it in a way that you think maybe has never been done before. And I'm not saying that every leader before you sucked. Maybe you're the worst leader in the world, but you're the right worst leader in the world at that point, because you're just doing it in a different way that then somehow encourages that 1,000,001 sentry moment. I hope that makes sense to everyone.
Rob, got any thoughts on that?
No, I like it. I like it. Sometimes people are tasked to certain roles. Yeah, sometimes they are punishments, and you have to change the idea about that. But the way you can frame it and the way you can articulate it, and like you said, inspire somebody else in ways other people haven't done it. That's great thinking. I like it.
Love it. Trav, any thoughts on that at all?
No, I think I said my points. I think Shaun's right on the support doesn't come from the top down, doesn't just come from the bottom up, maybe meet in the middle. I've always been a big believer of the concept or the idea. A parent supporting their children, that's going to be top down, but the parent wants to see the child be successful in every way possible. They're not going to get that way if they do everything for the child. They're going to have to allow the child to succeed or fail on their own right, and provide them the tools so that they can hopefully see gradual more and more successes. So I think if we can ascribe to an idea that is worthwhile and work towards that, and those people who are around you who wish to provide you support, or if you're supporting others, if you're believing in the idea, it'll come from a place of selflessness. It'll generate trust within the group that's behind it. And it's not one person over the other. It's we all achieved the same thing together.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're we're just about at time, and I know Rob's got to take off right away. So let's hit some. Unless there's anything else, Shaun, you got any other points before we?
Super quick. I know we kind of started off with teams, like sports teams, and then we went to ERT teams, and then we went to Sentry teams, and now we're at parenting teams. And I'm really glad that you raised up, supporting roles within a family, because if you've never been on an ERT team or a sports team or any team, well, chances are you've been in a family, either as a child or as a parent. And those are moments where you can learn how to do things better. And it's probably something that we should talk about in the future. Maybe not on Hope Week, but is there any hope as a parent? Maybe we can talk about, maybe we can do a week on parenting or something like that in the future. I'm not sure, but whatever the demographic wants. But it did make me think that this supporting role conversation is so much broader, so much more multifactorial than we have covered. And I just want everyone out there to understand that this is only an hour. There's a lot of great stuff in it, but obviously supporting roles is a really big conversation.
It is definitely a big conversation. Now let's hit some final thoughts, and then we'll shut her down for the day. Trav, what are your final thoughts on supporting roles?
I think I've said them. I think we're good.
Okay, cool. Rob, you got any additional final thoughts on anything we've gone over today?
Well, you know what? Now that Shaun mentioned it, I'm a grandfather, and my two grandchildren are recently, like last week, moved back here to Ontario. So now I'm in a supporting role to my daughter. I hope I can be some kind of leadership, mentorship role to my grandchildren. But now you just made me think about that. I have to support my daughter and how she wants to raise the children, and get to watch her make the parenting challenges and go through the things and that we've all gone through with our kids, and now have to guide, watch, but not push and support her. So it's same things we were talking about, but in a different way. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and congratulations, by the way, and also have fun meeting her in the middle on all those diaper changes.
Thank you.
And all the thousands of diaper changes. Shaun, you got any final thoughts?
Real quick, I just want to thank the fellas for bringing up all the wisdom that they did, making me think more, teaching me things in this conversation. And what it did expose me to, anyway, is the immensity of the subject. Not even specifically hope within supporting roles, but just supporting roles is probably several days worth of conversation, irrespective of hope. So I hope that in the future we get to cover this subject a little bit more. And that's where I'll end, just with a thanks, fellas. It was awesome.
Yeah, really do appreciate the combo. It was awesome. And Rob, thanks for joining us. You got looking forward to getting you back on another time when you're not crazy busy, or when your op tempo can slow down a little bit. Absolutely, we'll have you on anytime. Trav, always good to see you, man. I'm gonna poke you whenever I can to get you back on the show for sure. And so with that, I do really wanted to hammer on the fact that if you know what your intent is, then it's much easier to be in a supporting role when you know what the intent is. If you don't know what's going on, ask. Like, we can't know what to do unless you ask what to do. So that's my final thought on that one for sure. But as we all learn what it is to be a supporter, that allows us to build up our skill set so that we can grow into being the helpful, solid person that others can rely on. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see you all tomorrow. Chimo.